Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the E-Com Growth Show. We are unpacking Season 5. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the E-Com Growth Show.
Do I say hi now or do I wait?
I'm pretty much brain fried at this point.
Let's go.
The E-Com Growth Show is brought to you by Shopanova. It's an e-com growth company that takes Shopify stores that are doing $100K a month to their first $1 million month in just 2 years using the brand velocity framework. Now, if that's you and you want a little help along the way, we trust you can find our website, book a call, and start that whole process. But today, Daniel.
Well, also, Rob, if that's not you, we also have resources for people below that mark. We have a free Facebook group people can hop into where we do live weekly trainings and unpack a lot of these subjects in a lot more detail. We also have coaching, consulting programs to help people get from 10K a month to 100K a month. And then that's where the brand velocity then kicks in for them. So today, guys, we're going to talk about scaling your ad spend to $10,000 a day profitably. But first, before we dive in the 5 things you must do, let's talk a little bit about pitfalls, Bobby boy.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that we see, from marketers or CMOs is just scaling too fast.
Yeah.
Trying to get, maybe you crack some results and you're ready to get up to that 10K a day mark and you just want to get there so quickly that you scale up too fast. And the danger with that is just you don't realize how quick stuff can get off track at those higher speeds, at those higher ad spend levels. So that's one of the biggest pitfalls is just scaling too fast and letting things get out of hand.
Because a lot of people get things validated at $1,000 a day and they're like, I'm just going to 10x this, and then breaks the algorithm, it falls apart, returns drop, you have to start all over. Now on the flippity flop side of that is scaling too slow. You find something that works and you're just eking things up and you're not scaling quick enough. If you're trying to aggressively grow your brand, you have to know when to aggressively scale.
Yep.
So there's kind of a fine line right now. Now, a lot of times too, people are not relying on the right metrics. They're using old attribution models that don't really make sense anymore. So you have to look at your whole omni-channel approach and bring all that data essentially to a dashboard where you can read, where's my traffic coming from? And then how is it converting? Because a lot of times people are coming in through Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or one of the channels, not converting. And then you're picking them up through retargeting on your Google sequence or email or something like that. And then you're like, oh, weird, Facebook's not reporting any darn purchases. And so people cut that out, and then it kind of breaks their whole marketing stack because they're not looking at the right data.
Totally. And I would say too, it's just so important to make that shift now into having an actual evidence-based operating system with real first-party data. You're going to need that eventually anyways, because all of the third-party data, even cookies, all of that's going to be sunsetted here pretty quick anyways.
Yeah.
It all has an expiration date. So the quicker you can get set up with something to monitor all your traffic with real first-party data that you own and you can control, and you're not going to have Facebook or Apple or Google do a big rug pull on you and make you lose all of your entire customer journey. It's better just to get set up now because it's going to help you scaling to that 10K a day mark, but it's also just going to help you future-proof your business.
Yeah, totally. So last click attribution is the worst way to find out what's working and what's not with an omni-channel approach. You have to look at multi-touch attribution models. Lots of them out there. We're developing our own. Anyways, another one, YoYo scaling, guys. Spending up and down, saying, oh, it's working, scaling it, dropping it back. Just being sporadic and no plan in place really is not a good way to feed the ad account.
And I would say most people get into the habit of yo-yo scaling because they don't have their core media buying principles in place. One of the big things we talk about is frequency of exposure.
Yeah.
How often are you looking at the ad account? Are you measuring growth month over month, week over week? Or are you looking like, hey, was I profitable this weekend? And then cutting down ads. And, there's always just that fine balance, but you need to be able to develop your framework around, how often am I looking at the ads? Am I doing it often enough to make sure that things are heading in the right direction, but not so often that I'm an emotional wreck based on the ups and downs that are just natural in any system.
Yeah, exactly. Another mistake is putting a Ferrari engine in a Toyota. And what I mean by this is if you just scale the heck out of your marketing and sales and your business isn't prepared for it, breaks everything else downstream, and then you're back to where you started, pulling back marketing, slowing things down. And
Totally.
You blew all your darn wheels apart.
Totally. I'd like to see that actually, a Ferrari engine in a Toyota.
I kind of would too.
It's funny though you say that, because it almost leads us into one of the 5 must-have parts of getting to scale, getting to that $10,000 per day in the ad account, or ad accounts, probably more appropriately said. And that's really just pre-planning fulfillment and logistics. Just as much as you're focusing on marketing and sales and ad spend and budget optimization, all of those things, you need to be very, very prepared with making sure you're delivering on those orders.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times when people are scaling, they're pulling back, not because of something that's happening in their marketing or in their ad account. It's because they're actually hitting pretty big bottlenecks in the business.
Yeah.
And so the more you can kind of plan that out prior to getting up to those higher ad spends, definitely the better.
Yeah, exactly. So Wyatt, our director of results, was actually telling me a story the other day where he was part of this marketing team, and they were allocated like $15,000 a day. And they're just like, go out and spend it. No one was really leading it up. They just were spending all this money, right? And they had no strategy, no plan in place. And they ran it for like 10 days, just blew 150 grand, weren't getting the results they wanted. It was just a cluster, right? Because big brands will do that, like, hey, here's the budget, just go spend it. But if there's not a clear plan in place, it just crumbles, kind of like this did. And they ended up just cold cutting it off. It's like, oh, it's not working. He was like, that's all too common with some of the bigger brands at that ad spend level, just not having clear, concise plan. So Rob, that's kind of a lot of the pitfalls, things to avoid when scaling up to that level. What are the 5 must-haves?
Yeah, so the first one's going to be pre-planning, fulfillment, and logistics. And I know I just kind of mentioned it for a second there, but really the main things we're looking at when it comes to pre-planning, fulfillment, and logistics is making sure that you strike a proper balance between hiring more employees and optimizing your operations.
Yeah, because if you scale up your operations too much to the point of not being profitable on the back end, it doesn't allow you enough budget to scale your marketing and sales. So it's this kind of dance you got to do.
It's a juggling act, for sure.
I'd say it's a dance, brother.
You're not juggling, you're dancing.
You're dancing at that point. Yeah, that's so good. So are you prepared for a 30% increase month over month? Ask yourself that. If you are in the back end, well, let's go ahead and scale your marketing up that much. Do you have warehouse space, inventory, manpower? These are all questions you have to have answered before you just smash budget into the campaigns.
Yep. Another must-have for scaling up to $10,000 per day is having tons and tons of ad creative locked and loaded and ready to go.
Yeah, and you already probably know what's working, what's not, what styles. Make sure you have a lot of the styles that you know are already working. Sure, you're going to be blasting stuff out still that doesn't work, but a big note here is make sure you have validated creative ready to go, the style that you know works with your brand, so that you can be refreshing creative multiple times a week at this level. The last thing you want to do is be spending all this money, get ad fatigue, have to slow things down, replace ads. Just have it on hand so your media buyer just can keep refreshing it.
It's important to make sure that if you are running a multi-channel approach, you're not just creating one batch of ad creative to like blast all of the platforms. You want to be able to make sure your content is going specific to each platform, and the content is appropriate for each platform. How many of you guys know that what you put on TikTok is going to be a lot different from what you put on Facebook versus YouTube versus Pinterest? And so you just want to make sure that you have tons of validated creative for each channel. And kind of what we're looking at is, you want to have at least like a 2-week runway for all of those things. And Dan, if I may, I just kind of want to share a quick story because
you may.
We were working with this brand out of Miami, pretty big boutique. And one day we just got this weird request from her, and she's like, hey, I need to swap all of my imagery. Like we're talking the website, every single ad. And that alone wasn't necessarily weird, but like as we were scaling her up from, 100K to 2, 3, 4, 500K a month, what we found is that all of our strategies had an expiration date. And so when that would happen, we'd just rebuild the campaigns, we'd rebuild the funnel, we'd relaunch everything, and then we'd kind of be back to the races. Well, there was this really unique circumstance where she said she wanted to refresh all the imagery because there was like a knockoff brand, right? And it sounded like she had been here before. She was already geared up, had the lawyers, knew the process, but she wanted to make sure her brand was distinguished amongst this knockoff brand because they literally just copy and paste everything onto their website into the ads. But what was really interesting is we were at the tail end of when a campaign would expire according to her spend per month. I think we were right around 150K per month at this point. But as soon as we did a full refresh of creative, the images, the videos, both in every single ad that was running, but also on the website, we saw normally, like when we were going to have to rebuild everything, we saw a spike in performance and then sustained results for a period of time. So right away, we're like, oh, dang, we could kind of like see what was starting to happen. So instead of rebuilding all the campaigns next time when we started seeing performance dip, we just did a full refresh of ad creative. Yeah. And then boom, again, we'd see a spike in performance and sustained performance. We've been running that same strategy for, I think, over the last 2 years. Yeah. And she has now scaled up to high marks of $2.7 million in a single month. That was over like Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and an average of $1.4 million per month. And I would say that in the ad account, what was so interesting is all of the click metrics, all of the frequency metrics, everything in the ad account that would tell you the creative is bad, we were always getting the right signals. It was saying like, creative's good, it must be something else. So we were rebuilding things. But when we just built a discipline around refreshing creative, that's what enabled her to go from basically where she was, which I think at the time was like 350, 400 up to $1.4 million per month. Yeah.
So again, it's a dance. Always having the right creative. Just kidding. I wanted to say that again. That's awesome. Number 3 is accurate data. So you have to, at this point, use a platform that has multi-attribution reporting that can accurately track the data in real time. Because a lot of times data from Facebook and Instagram that is getting pulled into the ad account is coming back up to 72 hours later. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a big problem if you're spending $10,000 a day and you don't have the real-time data coming in to make decisions, because a lot of times you're making multiple changes a day at that point, because very quickly you're seeing if a new ad set or campaign isn't working, or if you have to reallocate budget to another platform. You need to know that in real time at those levels.
And there's actually limits on how much data they're even allowing back from Shop. Like, so if you're on Facebook, it's going to say we're only allowing this much data. So you got to prioritize your events, and it just starts to fall apart, especially if you're used to running ads in a world prior to iOS 14. So definitely having that evidence-based operating system with all your data coming in real time, based off of first-party data. It's just, there's no other way to do it now.
Yeah. So number 4 that kind of plays off of that is monitor and respond to the data. So looking hourly scaling and rapid fire scaling. Make smart use of automations. Don't advocate responsibility to rules and automations. That's something Wyatt's big on, is don't just set up automations at that level. You have to be in there monitoring things really closely. If you're not prepared to do it manually, just don't do it at all. Just don't do it at all, especially at scale.
Totally. Because, and just to make it super clear, the alternative to this is people used to think they could build, this full hierarchy of if-then rules, where it's like, if I spend this much, but I don't get this cost to acquire a customer, then reduce the budget by this percent. And it was just like, Facebook already has its machine learning, and then people are trying to set up all these rules as an extension of that machine learning. And by the time it gets through like all of these rules, you're just not making the best use of your ad spend. And the algorithms, it's kind of trying to jump through your hoops, and it's trying to optimize based on what you told it to prior to those rules. So like Wyatt said, you really got to be able to do it manually and get something validated. There is no like set it and forget it.
No, and I know you're like, oh, what about human error, yada, yada. Well, there's just no AI that's good enough yet to fully automate it and run it all.
Totally.
So just double check if you're doing that or your agency's doing that. Just make sure there's no automation set up in place at that scale. Rob, what is the last one?
So the last must have for scaling up to $10,000 and beyond in ad spend per day is having your team in place. You need several expert level people overseeing your marketing, not you. If you're existing in your ad account and running all of that, undoubtedly you are going to miss the big pieces that your business is going to miss out where it needs you. Because as you're scaling up, if you don't have direction for what it looks like to 3 or 4x your business, it's all going to fall apart anyways the minute you get there. So you really need to, as the CEO, as the owner, as somebody who's looking to grow this business, you need to be 2 steps ahead at all times, which means you cannot simply be like, you got to give yourself permission to get out of the ad accounts.
Yeah, so at this point, you need a team and you need someone running that team. It's going to take multiple media buyers at this point because you better be multi-channel at this spend. If you're not, you're silly goose. But you better have a team and then someone running that team. So in our case, we have a growth marketer that oversees that for our clients. A lot of businesses, they'll have the CMO running a team. Whatever that is, just make sure that's in place and built out as you're scaling to those levels. And just make sure you're selective about your core operations and you have that really solid team that can deliver good results. So really quick, guys, I want to recap the 5 things that you must have to scale profitably to 10K a day. So number 1, pre-plan fulfillment and logistics. Number 2, creative and lots of it. Number 3, accurate data. Number 4, monitor and respond. Oh, I can't do 4. Look at that. Monitor and respond to the data. And then number 5, I can do a 5. Make sure you have a good team in place that can execute the above. So Rob, that kind of concludes what we wanted to cover today. Kind of in the group, we really dive into more specifics on scaling techniques and stuff like that. But those are the kind of the 5 big picture things you have to have in place at those spend levels in order to not wreck yourself.
Yep, totally. And just a little cherry on top before we kind of wrap this up. If you're a brand with multiple SKUs in your business, consider at the higher spends building out individual strategies for every single top product that you have. Maybe you have 4 or 5 products that drive 80% of your revenue. At that point, they probably deserve their own strategy, their own funnels. Yep. And so you can segment those appropriately and scale them individually, because one product might scale better than the other rather than just trying to do a funnel to represent your entire brand. That's another way we can get up into these higher ad spend levels and be at that $10,000 a day plus. Now, again, Shopanova exists to take brands from that 100K a month mark, if you're on Shopify, to $1 million plus. If that's you and you want to see what's possible, if you want to see if we can do it, just hop over to our site, book a call, and we'd love to chat with you.
Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.